Doesn't it feel like the world is just losing its mind? We're more connected than ever, but we've never been more divided. We have all of human knowledge on a device that fits right into our pocket, but we can't seem to agree on the very simple facts, basic facts. And this wasn't an accident, cousin. No, it wasn't. We are now living in a quiet aftermath of a 60-year war on common sense. And this is the story of how we lost it. So come on, cousins, and let's pod about it.
In a world fraught with confusion, one man will break his silence.
You are now tuned in to the funkiest show this side of the Pecos, baby. How you guys been doing? Welcome to Word to the Wise. Who, me? My name is Terry Patrick, and I'm just your friendly neighborhood tour guide, your liaison, if you will, for this journey that we call life. And today we got to discuss something that is very important to me and to you, because I know you see it. You see it and you feel it, don't you, cousins? You can see that seems to be the last days of common sense. I believe it's going right out the window. The basic essentials that it is gone and it is moved away. So what I want you guys to do is just kick back and relax and just spend a little time with old cousin Terry. And before we get started, you know how we do. Got to give it up to the people who gave me my common sense. Oh yeah, everybody, let's give it up right here, right now for Pops and Fat Mama. Hey, there you go, Pops and Fat Mama. Let's get a round of applause. I know that growing up the way that I did, it's totally different than a lot of people, and for a lot of people, it's exactly the same. So I just want to break down what happened. What happened to just good old common sense? Yeah, common sense, it'll take you a long way. But some people, they just don't have it. And common sense used to be the bedrock of American life. It was like an unspoken agreement on how to operate in the world, a shared understanding of reality. Over the last several decades, it seems that the foundation has been systematically just dismantled piece by piece. We didn't get here overnight. No, it was a seismic cultural shift, and it started in the mid-20th century. It kicked off a slow chain reaction. And to understand how we got here, ladies and gentlemen, we got to go all the way back to the 60s. Let's go back to the 60s and take a look. When we were in the 60s, people had a different mindset. In the 60s, they often remembered as like this vibrant era of liberation and social programs. And in many, many ways, it was absolutely a powerhouse decade. We had the civil rights movement, fought bravely against systemic injustice and other movements that pushed for long due equality for women and other marginalized groups. But beneath this transformation, this transformative wave, another more subtle revolution, it was taking place, one that challenged the very core of what America called its shared values. It was a counterculture movement. That's what it was. And with that famous ethos of turn on, tune in, drop out. That was the direct reflection of mainstream conventions that the government had a life for us that we did not want. It was that love, peace, and freedom, and the new ideas that often just posed a perceived conformity, going against materialism of the 1950s. Yes, the flower child generation. And that exploded with a sexual revolution, where traditional views on marriage and family, they were just fundamentally questioned. And while this brought some new freedoms, especially for women, it also began to weaken the traditional family unit. That was an institution that had for centuries been the main vehicle for passing down some moral education, some shared societal norms, some common sense. When you had a family together, it just wasn't about lifestyles. It was about changing who or what that we trust. Think about it. For the first time, on a mass scale, the individual, rather than the community or tradition, became the ultimate arbiter of truth, the individual. And that movement, it just encouraged a deep skepticism of authority, especially against the government and against the church and even the family. It was a new focus, radical individualism. And while it was liberating, but it planted some seeds, didn't it, kinfolk? Yeah, talk to me, cousins. It planted some seeds of a society where we shared truth, and it become harder and harder to hold on to. What are those shared truths that I'm talking about? I'm talking about where you got information and everybody had the information at the same time. Now, individuals, one person becomes a news source. And that's what happened to the 60s. And it moved on back to the 70s, boy, feeling groovy. What happened in the 70s? Drop a comment over there in the comment section. Love to be able to hear from you. And if you'd like to be able to subscribe to this channel, I would love to get you to give me a like and a subscribe and support your boy over here as we continue here with episode 55, The Last Days of Common Sense. What happened in the 70s? It was the erosion of trust. See, the 60s planted a seed. It gave us that doubt of cultural institutions, but the 70s, they saw that doubt, it start to spread like cancer, especially into our political arenas. It started defining the event of the decade was, without doubt, what? Watergate. I don't know if you guys remember Nixon and Watergate, but the impact of it, it was devastating. And in public trust and in the government, it was at an all-time low. And by the time President Nixon resigned in 1974, that number had plummeted even lower, down to about only 36% of Americans trusted. Faith in our institutions was shattered, and we never really recovered. That scandal, it created a generation of cynics, a generation of pessimists, and it cemented in the belief that our institutions weren't just flawed, but maybe inherently just corrupt down to the core like a rotten apple. And the leaders that were driven by self-interest and not in public service, but in self. So we took a look at that. And common sense, it relies on a degree of faith. Faith that we're all operating with a similar set of values, a similar set of facts. There were no alternative facts, and Watergate destroyed that faith for millions of people, and it left us in a vacuum of that skepticism that would just curdle into outright cynicism. And then we came to the next decade, the 80s. Now we're talking business, baby. Now we are in the 80s. Got some cool pictures up here, some great movies that are out, man. I looked at this and I was like, wow, look like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone, and they dominated the 80s with a lot of great action movies. But what happened to common sense during that time? During the rise of that individualism that came out of the 70s, what happened in the 80s? But 80s was a decade where cultural shifts, where the previous 20 years got supercharged by this brand new economic ideology, hyper individuality. The 60s said, hey, do your own thing. And the 70s said, man, don't trust no one. But the 80s screamed, greed is good. It was the decade of decadence, the decade of excess. Why have one Lamborghini when you can have three? The decade was defined by a celebration of wealth and materialism and personal success above all. The yuppie was born, better known as the young urban professional, the yuppies. They became cultural icons. They were the symbol of conspicuous consumption. I'll say that again. Conspicuous consumption. Where are you getting all this money? They were lacking morals. And you had all these economic policies that one of them was dubbed Reaganomics. Reagan said it's going to have a trickle-down effect. We'll give the money to the people up top, and then it'll trickle down. And it focused on deregulations, tax cuts, and fueling massive consumer boom. And it just wasn't about the economy. It was a cultural shift. The American dream was increasingly defined not by community well-being, but how much money could you accumulate? How much wealth could you gather for yourself? What you owned became who you are. It wasn't about common sense or love for your fellow man. In the 80s, just wiped it out. It was an intense focus, you guys, on furthering weakening bonds of society. Wall Street Journal, they had a poll that highlighted it was a trend that was telling between 98 and 2023. And the only value that grew in importance for American was money. Wall Street Journal. Money was jumped from being very important to the most important thing. And then we took that and our own common sense, it was hanging on by a thread, and it was like a self-reliant ethos that resonated with a nation. It was tired of social upheavals of the past, but was also sped up, and it atomized the American way of life. Get yours first. And there's a pursuit of personal happiness, personal ambition. That's what took center stage in the 80s. And it undermined all of society's common sense. They were just pushed away to the side, pushed over there to the sidelines. The 80s. What about the 90s? The 90s. A lot happened. So if common sense was just hanging on by a thread inside of that time, what do you think happened here when we got to the 90s? Love to hear from you. Let me hear from you in the comment section, but I'm going to break it down to its last compound, because it was a fragmentation of the truth that happened in the 90s all the way up to the 2000s. The tech era began. And we, as just plain old citizens with common sense, we looked at stuff and said, how are you getting this information? I mean, it was like we completely saw the world for what it was. And then you got your information for decades off one or two or maybe three news channels. Decades, that's how we got our information. But then the rise of the 24-hour cable news and the birth of public internet, it spelled the era of the end of the era for shared information. Remember how one person can be a news source, but we didn't trust that. We trust Walter Cronkite. We trust the news that was on TV. And for decades, that's where we got it. But now, if you got all these other 24-hour news channels that got launched, like CNN, they were followed by rivals like Fox News and MSNBC, that shattered that landscape 24/7 news cycle. What did they need? A relentless demand for content, which often led to sensationalism. Let's make some stuff up. And the opinion shows that design, they capture that niche audience as well. And for the first time, you could choose a news source that confirmed everything that you already believed in, creating some kind of feedback loop. All right, my feedback is the stuff that I already believe in, so I will watch that channel. Instead of getting one set of information, now we have 24 hours. And news is always trying to make you angry and not make you informed. That's what happened. Then came the internet. Hell, that's the great democratizing force. It has to be in many ways. I mean, it sped up that fragmentation, didn't it? It splintered. You had 3, and then now you got 24 hours, and you got a hunger for content. You got to have new content to the point they're making stuff up. And now you got the internet where it connects people across the globe, but it also allows us to be able to stay in the echo chamber. It shielded us from having opposing views. If you only watch one news station, you have a fragmented truth. The truth is broken up into fragments, and that's why social media has algorithms that perfected that. This is what you want, huh? I'm going to feed you more and more of what you already believe in. I'm going to feed that so you have no opposing views, and that just makes common sense gets diminished. And that's the result of society. Citizens aren't just disagreeing on opinions, but on basic verifiable facts. The earth is round, no, the earth is flat. Basic verifiable facts. No longer are we just fussing and fighting over opinions, but common sense can't survive. It can't survive in a world where there is no common reality. If you hear what I'm saying, cousins, and you know why I'm saying this, I want you to truly understand where we are and where we're going. Because we're going somewhere. This is not overnight. This is stuff that has been baked into the fabric of America now. It is woven into the tapestry of who we are. Then came the new millennium, Y2K. Remember, the different forms of information and common sense just went out the window. Y2K was supposed to be the end-all, be-all. There were end-of-the-worlders and doomsdayers who were getting prepared for the big Y2K. It was supposed to crash everything. It was going to crash the money market, the housing market. Everything was supposed to come to a financial halt and start up riots and wars in the street. We partied on 1999. Yes, we did. And we had a good time too. And we made sure that we looked at everything that was going on inside the world. And now today we are living with those consequences. The ideological divisions that started simmering decades ago. Now they've hardened into what feels like an unbridgeable chasm. Skepticism. Don't trust this. I don't trust that. I don't trust the news. I don't trust the internet. I don't trust the government. And if I don't trust the church, I start not to trust my community. I don't trust the family. I don't trust myself. That's what happened. It morphed into a wholesale rejection, fragmentation of the truth. If we're living right now in what we created, I like to call it a post-truth environment. Personal feelings, group identity, it means more than facts. Tell a person the facts and I don't believe that. Yeah, we've seen the shift. It went from that rugged individualism, greed of the 80s, new focus on the group identity, and then it became vital to address systemic issues. So the issue and the intense focus, sometimes it has deepened the fracture. How are we going to get back? How can we possibly get back from this? We have gotten deep into the game now, and it's all about who I am. It's all about me, me, me. What's the world going to be like today? What's your world like right here, right now? Drop a comment over there in the comment section and tell me right here, tell me, cousins, what's the world like for you today? What have you seen? Have you seen that you can't argue with a fool? No, you can't change anybody's position on anything anymore. A person believes what they believe, and that's that. Why? Because they got an outlet that's feeding that belief, that's feeding that one-sided, that fragmented belief. They got something that is feeding that hunger. Whatever you believe, you can find somebody who is an echo chamber for you. It's on the internet. It's on the news of your preference. I think we got to get back, folks. I think we got to get back, kinfolk. Come on, cousins. We got to get back to having just common sense. You can't piss in my face and tell me it's raining. No. And you can't sit up there and tell me that I stole all your money because it was what's good for you. No, that's not common sense. That is a ignorance. And it can't be tolerated. When you get so far away from common sense, you lose your ability to be able to find and root out a crook and a liar. See, you can tell a lie 1,000 different ways, can't you? But boy, the truth, man, it just keeps sounding the same. So I just took you on a trip during the past shows that I had, and I want you to be able to check those out too. And it shows you that it is an erosion of common sense. And it wasn't one single event, but a slow, cascading failure of the values and institutions that we used to hold us together. So from the Cultural Revolution of the 60s to Watergate's demolition of the political trust, to the hyper-individualism and the greed of the 80s, to the fractured realities of this internet age, each step has taken us further and further away from a shared understanding of what the world really is. We've traded a common set of facts for personalized information streams. It is catered. It is a la carte. And we snapped. Then we swapped our sense of shared destiny, at us as mankind, for the priorities of the individual, for the sake of the tribe. The tribe is gone. So common sense was never about everyone thinking the same thoughts. No, it wasn't. It was about operating from the same foundational reality. It was like an invisible thread that allowed us to be diverse and often disagreeing nation, but still function and progress. Now that thread is frayed, severed. The question we're left with is not just have we lost our common sense, but whether a society this deeply split and divided can ever get back. Can we get back? I don't know. I feel that maybe we crossed the line a long time ago. You got United States, it is severed. It is split. And unless somebody start having some common sense and be like, what you're doing, that's That's just not right. That's not moral. It's not just. It's not of God. And regardless of what facts you present to me, your fact, your facts seem a little swayed. Don't you believe that? Hey, facts don't care about your feelings. And if you can get back to being this a human being and saying, as one human, I will not do that to another human being, because we're all part of the human race. We got so many things, so many different buckets and categories and different arenas that we can separate and put, oh, you belong over here and you belong over there, and pretty soon go back to where you belong because you don't belong here. We got all these things that can separate us. What are we creating that's going to bring us back together? Where is it? Ah, my goodness, we better do something. And I don't have the answer to the problems of the world or even the problems of this nation that we live in. But I do have enough common sense to know these are the last days of common sense. All right. And this is the last few moments of this podcast. I thank you guys. I always do. I love that we can get together on these Wednesdays and have these type of conversations. And I really could use your support. If you would like to support this program, please do. Feel free. And hey, drop me a comment or a like over there. And if you like to be able to subscribe to this channel, you can catch me right down there on YouTube at The T Patrick, or over at TikTok at Cat Daddy in the Mix. Yes, I'm out here. I'm out here in these digital streets. And I love what I do. And I love the fact that I have the opportunity to share a little bit of common sense, as long as we still got a little bit of free speech that is left. All right, you guys.
I hope you watch the podcast and you really like the podcast.
Come on, be serious.
And you really like my podcast.